So if you're asking the question, how do I get the full life potential out of my AC and heating system? Whether you're trying to get a couple more good years out of it, or even if you have a newer HVAC system and want to make sure you get your full money's worth, well, there are 10 simple things that you can look for to help extend the life of your AC system. But what are these 10 things that we should all be looking out for? Well, let's talk about it.
Hi, this is Kenneth with Atlas AC, and at any point during this video, if you find it to be helpful, please hit the like button, and that will really help me out with the YouTube algorithms.
To help simplify things, I'm going to put these 10 tips into 3 different categories. The first being wear and tear, the second being how you're operating your AC system, and the third being how to keep an unnecessary load off your AC system. So let's start off with wear and tear. Many folks are unaware that there are some components on an HVAC system that wear out a lot faster than other components, kind of like on a car. For instance, the brakes and the tires. Even if you buy a brand new car, you're going to have to continually replace the brakes and the tires throughout its life, even though the rest of the car is just fine. But what would happen if you don't replace the brakes and the tires? Your tires will eventually go bald, your brake pads will wear to nothing, and the end result could be disastrous. And that's the exact same thing for an AC system. So our first wear and tear component is the contactor, and it is responsible for turning on and off the outdoor unit. So basically how a contactor works is it has a plunger that springs in and out of place to make the power connection or disconnect the power. So when the thermostat calls, it closes, and when the thermostat is satisfied, it opens. And after doing this a million times, it just starts to wear out. Not only that, bugs are also attracted to them, so they like to build their nest inside of them. So the big issue is when it starts to wear out, or bugs start to live in it, as it's opening and closing, the power can start arcing, and that arc is dirty power going directly into your AC unit. And this dirty power is going to have an impact on everything downstream. It can start taking out other components, along with damaging things like your compressor, which is tantamount to an engine in a car, all from this little inexpensive wear component. Now, I'm not saying that this component has to be changed out once a year, and actually some contactors will last the full life of the system. However, in the same breath, we've had some units that we've needed to replace a contactor in 2 or 3 times. However, the problem with a contactor is it just ends up being out of sight, out of mind. So I would look out for pitting, which is signs of arcing, bugs living inside of it, and loud buzzing noises. So if you see or hear any of those things, I would recommend replacing it right away. And as a side note, there are some technicians out there that will intentionally overlook this item because changing out a contactor is fairly inexpensive versus having something like your compressor go out. Now you're dealing with a really big ticket. Now, a contactor does deal with high voltage, so if you're not used to dealing with electricity or working on an AC unit, I'd probably not mess with this component. And that's the same for our next component, which is the run capacitor. A run capacitor is in use the entire time the AC is operating. So the way that a run capacitor works, not to get too technical, is as power is being fed through it, it is directing that power into 2 different locations, kind of like creating artificial 2-phase power. And this will feed things like the compressor. So as the capacitor weakens over time and is no longer operating within factory spec, the power that it's delivering begins to weaken to the point where it's not delivering the power correctly, aka where the artificial 2-phase power that it's creating is breaking down. This causes the amp draws to shoot up high, which adds a lot of heat to the compressor. And since the windings isn't getting the power that it needs, it also starts to break down, which begins to damage the compressor and will eventually take it out. I apologize if that was overly technical. I just couldn't come up with a simpler way to explain it. However, the important takeaway here is if you don't catch a weak run capacitor, it could cause some serious damage to very expensive components like your compressor. So the run capacitor needs to be checked at least once a year, and I would recommend doing this before your AC gets heavily used, so basically in the springtime. Now obviously there are going to be more components that will wear out over time. However, the contactor and capacitor can wear out and can do a lot of damage downstream. So now let's jump over and talk about how you operate the system and the potential impacts that it might have. Now to start things off, let's first talk about thermostat settings. So let's say you have a job and the kids go to school, and generally speaking, nobody's home during the weekdays. And since nobody's home, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to run your AC and spend all that extra money. So you program your thermostat to raise the temperature to, let's say, 82 degrees when nobody's home. And around 4:30, you have the thermostat set to drop back down to, let's say, 75 degrees. And the big issue with this is it ends up adding an unnatural load to your AC, because the way that AC systems are designed is to cycle throughout the day to maintain the house at a certain temperature. Now when it's 82 degrees in your house and you're wanting the AC to drive down the temperature to 75 degrees, it's going to end up adding a whole lot more wear and tear running your system this way. versus just leaving it set at a set temperature. Not only that, but most folks in the HVAC industry will tell you that it doesn't actually save you that much electricity because all you're doing is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Next up, let's cover how HVAC systems are designed to operate. So let's say you have a standard home with standard insulation. Most homes and HVAC systems are usually designed for a 20 to 25 degree split between the indoor and outdoor temperatures. So what that means is if we have a 100-degree day, your AC system is designed to operate in between 75 and 80 degrees. And past that, it's just never going to turn off or cycle off and on like it should be. So if you're running your AC at 68 degrees or 70 degrees on a 100-degree day, depending on your home and your HVAC design, it could be adding a ginormous load to your AC that it just wasn't designed for. So it's going to end up wearing out everything a whole lot faster. So if your AC never turns off during the summer, you may want to consider raising the temperature in your home a couple degrees so the AC can properly cycle and run as designed. So now let's shift gears and talk about how to keep the burden on an HVAC system as minimal as possible. Because if the system doesn't have to work as hard, that means it can last longer. So rule number 1, keep everything clean. Because when components like your indoor evaporator coil starts to get impacted with dirt, that dirt kind of acts like a insulation barrier. So it's not able to properly transfer the heat to cool your house. So let's say you have a dirty indoor coil and it's lost its ability to transfer heat and convert it over to cool air by, let's say, 30%. That means your HVAC system is going to have to work 30% harder and 30% longer than it normally would, which is going to end up reducing the life of the system. And the exact same thing is going to apply to the coils on your outdoor unit. Now let's say you have a dirty blower wheel that is impacted with dirt. It's not going to be able to move as much air, which is also going to make the system run longer and harder. And next up, we have dirty filters. Let's say you forget to change your filter for a few months and it's gotten pretty dirty. That's going to start dramatically restricting airflow, which is going to add wear and tear to the system. And the problem with filters is they need to be changed all the time, and it just ends up being really easy to forget. So I would recommend setting up reminders to make it easy to remember. And if you change your filters on a routine basis, the chances of your evaporator coil and blower well getting caked up with dirt is dramatically reduced, or will potentially never become a problem. So change your filters. Next up is shrubs, plants, and debris around your outdoor unit. So let's say your wife thinks the outdoor unit is an eyesore in the backyard. So let's say you plant some shrubs around it to kind of hide it. So they grow up right next to your condenser, hiding the outdoor unit. And the problem with this is a condenser needs at least 18 inches of clearance on all sides in order to work properly. So if you have plants or debris right next to the unit, it's going to increase the load on the AC system, making it work harder and longer. So if you have plants or shrubs around your condenser, make sure they stay trimmed back at least 18 inches. Next up, we have ductwork. Over time, it might get to the point where it's no longer sealed as good as it once was. Or a squirrel gets in the attic and chews a couple holes in the ductwork. This could cause your AC to run 20 or 30% longer, which over time, it's going to reduce the life of the system. So you're going to want to make sure that your ductwork is periodically checked to make sure everything's good.
If you found this video to be helpful, please hit the like button. We also have free buyer's guides and price lists on our website that you might want to check out. Until next time, have a good one.